Despite August being marked as Women's Month, the scourge of femicide and other forms of gender-based violence continues in South Africa. Hlengiwe Mkhize, the Deputy Minister of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, joins me now from Johannesburg for more. Deputy Minister, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. It's really scared to hear women say that they're more afraid of men than this pandemic in South Africa. What do you say to the pleas of everyone we're hearing from right now about these issues?
Thank you very much for having me. I think first and foremost, we all have to try and pay particular attention to Nosicelo family. This is quite traumatic. Even when listening to students' messages from the University of Fort Hare, you could really see that people are going hysterical. So we have this trauma that we have to manage. But I fully agree with them that if you look at the two pandemics, then when we talk about COVID, there's this, people feel we are in control. The more people immunize, then the less risk will the community be exposed to. But what is worrying with the scourge of GBV is really that no matter what interventions are put in place at a local level, at a community level, it seems like there are people out there who think their mandate is to prove that patriarchy is the norm, that they own women, and women cannot say no. Women cannot change their minds, even if they are in relationships. So, you know, we are trapped in this serious power dynamic, which is something which I think, if you look at the policies which are saying, let's have structures at each and every level, so as to be able to identify the risk on time and intervene before the country is put in this shocking wave of people found in black paper bags and some body parts somewhere in the house and so on. So it's quite a difficult time, I must say, for the country as a whole.
So, Deputy Minister, are you admitting that the Emergency Response Action Plan on gender-based violence is actually failing?
I wouldn't like to say it failed. Maybe I can account a bit quickly as to what was achieved. You know, there are things that the police had to do. And after that debate, high-level debate in Parliament by all political parties, it was clear that there were weaknesses in our system, so the police had to attend to those immediately. Investigation, the President said, even cases that have not been taken forward to the courts, they should be reinvestigated and taken forward. The expansion of sexual offences courts, the expansion of the shelters, and so there were quite a number of strategic interventions that were lacking behind. After that debate, Parliament gave leeway to departments that have a budget on gender-based violence to say, let's intervene immediately, which I think NGOs who are in this space on a daily basis were happy, because no matter how much they do, if really the criminal justice system is weak, they are not going to see impact.
It's still not working, Deputy Minister, and I'll tell you why. Because I spoke to Mbali Shongwe last week, and she's launched #MyVoiceForJustice. She went to a police station last year saying she was raped. They mocked her. One officer apparently tried to flirt with her. Eventually, her case was thrown out of court, or wasn't taken to court, because the DNA evidence that was required was not received back to the station. And she still does not have justice. We keep hearing those stories about police failing to treat women who have been raped properly. And yet you're talking to me about this action plan, seeing improvements when it comes to police. And the stories we're hearing contradict that.
You see, we ought to look at the monitoring system of the police. And of course, our ability to report all those cases. I'm fully aware, even in our department, they flood us to say, I went to this police station, this is what is happening at Mamelodi. They asked me a question in the hall where there were other people. So in the system, there are still weaknesses in terms of human resource, people who are not getting it right, following even their minister's commitment in terms of saying we will fight the scourge, we will succeed, we will put as much resources as possible. So there's that human error which we have to deal with, especially the line function ministry, that's the Minister of Police, to make sure that he gets rid of anyone who is found to have ridiculed a woman who has been exposed to gender-based violence or femicide, anyone who ridicule, for instance, a woman who is disabled. And I have one case at the moment where a woman is saying, even my family didn't support me. Even the police station, it was a joke, saying this man has done you a favor. So we still have those cases in our system because the problem, remember, we had the Domestic Violence Act. Police couldn't even arrest perpetrators. Women died in their hands with protection orders because police were not doing much. But I don't think we are where we were yesterday. Levels of accountability today are much higher. If really we can consolidate our reporting, creating a database of all these cases where we are extremely unhappy, I do think the minister is empowered enough to clear the system, and get people with a new mind. But of course, if there's no consequent management, it's not going to stop on its own.
Yeah, and it's not stopping because there are no consequences for all stations. There are groups that are saying this quite evidently, that police station commanders are not reprimanding or even suspending or investigating members who are ill-treating women who come to them trying to open up a rape case. That's not happening. So whether the Minister of Police is empowered to do that or so, I'm afraid to tell you that that's not the stories we are hearing. There's another issue, Deputy Minister, of DNA backlogs, which ultimately sees no justice for women who are raped. And you have people like Mbali Shongwe who say, I've been to the police ministry, I've been to this ministry, I've been to another ministry, everyone's ignored me for over a year. So what is your department doing to deal with these issues? Because clearly women need to be assisted when it comes to these things. Who do they go to?
Well, for instance, in our department, we have regular interaction with different groups, be it young, old, persons with disability, women in the private sector, just to make sure that we get information. We have this inter-ministerial committee, of which the Minister of Police is part of it. So we have these structures, which is important for us to utilize in such a way that everybody plays the part they are supposed to play. Because if we find that in our system, any one ministry remains a problem for too long, we also report to the president on a regular basis. So the more we get information, the better, because when we meet in the Inter-ministerial committee, we are able to talk about this. For instance, the issue of forensic as a big problem in the country. It became clearer and clearer as we were discussing it within the Inter-ministerial. Hence, even some provinces are making some moves to say, instead of sending our specs to Gauteng or to this, we could offer the place to be one of the laboratories. So it led to action because there were engagements and we had information, the facts about the gaps in the system, that in some areas these are old laboratories which are not even modernized. So the more we get information, the better.
What does your department do when it comes to these concerns? Because you're sitting in an inter-ministerial committee. Are you holding the police minister, the justice minister accountable? Because that's a thing that is not happening when ordinary South Africans are reaching out to the police or justice ministers. They're not getting any joy. They have to come to the media to tell their story.
You see, those who share information with us, even if they've gone to other ministers, some people, they'll go there thinking that they will be able to help them with funding and so on. We usually take actually all the cases are tabled and we take them up, we discuss them, we agree on actions that should be taken. As I've said, that I think with the forensic laboratories, we have come a long way in our discussions in terms of saying,
but not far enough.
Well, we write regular reports to the president. There is monitoring and evaluation, also both from our department and in the president's office. They are beginning to evaluate impact. But I must say, some of the strategic approaches which have been adopted, like to also put a lot of responsibility at a local level, starting with the district development model, looking at mayors and councillors, what kind of structures should they be formed right up to a community level. I think it's very, very important because things go wrong in communities where people are not responsive to the public's complaints. Like in the case of students at Forte, when they tell you that whether you phone a mayor, whether you phone a police station, nobody responds. So those are weaknesses in the system, not policy weaknesses. You know, I was looking at this thing at Forte saying Dr. Nzimande was the first minister after the president have issued the NSP to come out public and be able to say, I'm adopting this policy. I want all my universities to adopt it and to create all the structures as per the pillars. So I think things have happened, but as to the implementation, I think that's where we are now.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate because, you know, things are happening. I know you're saying they're happening, but they're not happening fast enough because in the last quarter where we had crime stats, more than 10,000 women were raped. And it's not something that these people want to hear you say, that you're working on it, things are getting better, but they're experiencing a very slow justice system that often does not help them get any justice.
I mean, I fully agree that women of South Africa have been good enough. They've been tolerant, they've been understanding. But when you look at developments within the country, whether it's August month or it's during the period of 16 days of activism and beyond, there's this brutality and cruelty that really doesn't match any of the cases of gender-based violence we talk about worldwide. So we are really here in trouble. We have a head of state who have come up in support of the fight against GBV, but still it's like there are people who are just not getting it.
Yeah. All right. I want to move away from us making these general promises or statements about the fight against GBV. I'm going to ask you, Deputy Minister, to try to speak to Mbalishongwe. The campaign is about the DNA backlog, which is basically hindering justice for women when it comes to rape. Because me listening to her last week on the show talk about how no one has helped her and how she's actually decided to move away from her rape because she doesn't believe she'll get justice is actually a huge indication of the failures of our government when it comes to rape and gender-based violence in this country. So I'm going to get my producers to give you her details, and I would really like to speak to you guys maybe a month later to see how your talks are going to deal with this issue. And then we can say we're actually getting somewhere, we're doing something to try and fight this one person at a time. Because everybody's rape is a crime in this country that cannot be accepted. We can't say that we're accepting it because men are brutal, the justice system struggles with DNA backlogs, etc. We need to do something one person at a time. I thank you so much for your time and speaking to us, Deputy Minister, and I hope to do speak to you about this issue regarding Mbalishongwe as well next month on the show.
Thank you very much for your commitment to the issue, Shahan. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That, of course, is Hlengiwe Mkhize, Deputy Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities Minister.